Tough Studio, Boomer Esiason, Greg Giannotti. It's Boomer and Gio on the Fan, simulcast across the country on CBS Sports Network and wherever you are in the free Odyssey app. Good Monday morning. The 2024 New York Jets have entered the conversation into the biggest group of losers in New York sports history, considering the expectations and the way that this season has gone. In recent memory, I remember that Javi Baez, Marcus Stroman Mets team and a thumbs down to the fans, but that team really didn't have a ton of expectations. We went and got Baez at the trade deadline, but they were a bunch of losers, and got those guys out of there, and they changed things around, and Francisco Lindor became the leader we wanted him to. I don't know where the hell this season goes, but these guys are the biggest losers I have ever seen. Every single one of them. And that pathetic, disgusting loser defense that can't stop Anthony Richardson twice in the fourth quarter. 70-yard drives! This guy was taking himself out of games. You're a bunch of losers. And Jeff Ulbrich has no goddamn idea what he's doing. None. And this is a guy that you fired a head coach to put in charge. And I feel bad for him. He's a nice guy. He's got no clue. Todd Downing, Nathaniel Hackett, losers. Every single one of them. And I don't know how you get out of it. I don't know if Aaron Rodgers is going to play just for the money. But this, I mean, we sat here on Friday, and I said, you want to talk about a new low? Losing this game. I actually bet the Jets yesterday. That's how much I thought they were going to win. Maybe that's why I'm even extra pissed off. Losers. Good morning, Boomer. How are you?
Yeah, well, I'm doing better than you are, obviously. I mean, man, you are like jumping off the cliff right now. I'm not saying they don't, but I would say here's
Sauce Gardner, loser.
Well,
shouldn't get paid.
Okay. Here they're going to get paid. So here's the thing. Number one,
by who? Not the Jets. Better not pay that guy.
I didn't know. I didn't know whether or not Aaron Rodgers was going to come out for the second half, because it looked to me like in the first half this was like the last place he wanted to be. I mean, I see very little interaction between he and Todd Downing. I don't really know who Aaron's talking to during the game or, on the sideline. He sits there on the sideline. It looks like he doesn't even want to get engaged. And then all of a sudden, the second half, things start going right for them. I will say that on that last drive for the Colts, that game-winning drive for them, I don't know what Jalen Mills is thinking about against Alec Pierce down the right sideline. I mean, you got to keep everything in front of you. You don't jump a double move route, and you are more experienced, and then allow that to happen. And then the whole discussion as to whether or not they should be going for it on 4th and 2, or should they go for a 2-point play. I mean, like all this idiocy that is surrounding this football team. This season can't get over fast enough.
Oh yeah, no, you're right.
I will say that in Aaron's nuanced way, his post-game press conferences, and I think this is probably what got him a little bit in trouble in Green Bay. There's always a little bit of something that it's somebody else's issue. You know what I'm saying?
All right, and Mike Williams made that clear how much that bothered him once he got out of here and went to Pittsburgh, and you said that it was his reaction and the way that he talked about here and did his little thing on social media and Redline and how happy he was that he got to Pittsburgh. That just showed you what it's like here. And Aaron Rodgers he was supposed to save the franchise. He somehow dug them into a deeper hole than they were before, which I never saw coming. I mean, we were all wrong about a lot of things in sports when we guess, but I just had all the respect in the world for him as a quarterback and a Hall of Fame player to come here, and that's the type of guy that the Jets needed. Have Aaron Rodgers be to the Jets what Mark Messier was to the Rangers, and just be the guy that ends the curse or whatever. I mean, he has made this thing worse. Now, I know that nobody expected the injury to happen, but he's cooked, he's done, he's finished. He cannot play.
He actually played a really good second half.
Okay, but they were terrible in the first half, and the whole totality of him this season stinks. And you might get a little bit of a gleam at some point because he's Aaron Rodgers, and it's in there. You might get it here or there, but it's never going to be consistent enough ever again because he's too old.
Well, let's face it, this defense, was a disaster in the fourth quarter. You can say whatever you want about I guess I could say whatever I want about his body language in the first half, which was brutal. I didn't even think that they wanted to play in the first half. It was so bad. But then they came out and they played well in the second half, and then all of a sudden you could see they actually got some momentum and they started moving the ball. But this defense, and you talked about it. I mean, like, when Anthony Richardson is doing what Anthony Richardson did yesterday, you could see he's a dual threat and he's a pain in the ass.
He's never done it before.
But he hasn't done it like this for 4 quarters. He hadn't done it before.
Never!
Right. I know.
And he did it in the fourth quarter, which is generally when things melt down for these younger quarterbacks. I've heard you say a million times, but can he do it for 4 quarters? Can he do it really? When you get to the fourth quarter, can he still do those things? This guy hadn't proven a thing. And the only reason he was put back in there is because Joe Flacco was so bad, and they were like, okay, there's really no point. We were trying to get Flacco maybe to sneak into the AFC playoffs, but he stunk, so let's put this kid back in there. They were going to sit him for the rest of the year. He was so bad.
Well, you saw that turnover in the second half changed the game.
Yeah, true. Yep.
You know, that was the momentum. I mean, and that's who he is. Like, he tries to do a few crazy things, and and just listening to the game, the guys were all over it, and all of a sudden, one double move down the sideline, and the momentum is completely shifted, and you could feel it. It's like a tidal wave against the Jets on the field at MetLife Stadium, and you just felt like the game was going to be lost right then and there.
Yeah, and I really feel bad for these fans. I understand, like, in the context of being a sports fan, all right? You feel bad for Jets fans. How about all the people starving in the streets? I'm sure I'm going to get that on X.
No.
In the context of sports fans,
yes.
I actually feel bad for these people because there's guys like Sean Winters and people who buy season tickets that are paying personal seat licenses that are still dragging their ass to these games, hoping to get a little bit of something. Like, that's like, okay, season's over, this stinks, this experiment didn't work, but hell, at least we'll have a nice day today on a sunny day at MetLife Stadium, and we can beat this terrible Colts team. But no, you can't even do that. I mean, the core of this thing is so rotten. I've been saying it for weeks, the whole thing. And you could point fingers everywhere you want, but, I mean, you got an old, washed-up quarterback who had too much control of this situation, and you got an owner who got a little bit too crazy this season. That combination with a bunch of young guys on this defense who think there's something that they're not. I mean, we could point blame and say which one is the bigger blame, or it's a whole bunch of things that have led to this. And I mean, I have no idea. If Aaron Rodgers says he's going to play next year, I have no idea how they figure this thing out. How? I mean, like,
I'll give you an example. If you want one example of how it could work out,
yes, please.
I'll give you one example, and it's going on right now in the NFL. Now, it didn't mean that the final year of the experienced quarterback worked, because it didn't. But ultimately, a team decided this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to try to do it. And if it doesn't work, then we are going to move in a completely different direction. And that would be the Denver Broncos.
Yeah, so they, and yes, we have referenced that they just said, forget it, I'm going to eat all that money.
Yeah, but remember who they brought in?
Well, they brought in Sean Payton.
Right,
Yeah.
They needed somebody on the sideline that was going to be bigger than any person's attitude or control on the team as players. In other words, they needed somebody to bring immediate credibility to the team.
Yeah, and that's what we've talked about with Gruden. But I also think that where there's a good example there is that was the first time that a team ate so much dead cap money that it like hurt the organization in the short term. But they said, we got to get rid of this guy. We can't do this. And we'll figure it out, and we'll draft a quarterback. We'll play a rookie quarterback. We'll deal with the dead money. But we used to look at that contract going, oh, they're stuck with Russell Wilson now. I mean, what the hell are they going to do? And they just said, screw it. You know what? 30, 40 million dead cap money. I don't care. This guy's got to get out of here.
But the point being is that they did give Russell Wilson and Sean Payton a chance to work together to see what could happen.
Yeah, it failed.
And actually, Russell Wilson played a lot better under Sean Payton than he did under Nathaniel Hackett.
Well,
and probably because Nathaniel Hackett and the Broncos deferred way too much to Russell Wilson. In other words, we got this Super Bowl winning quarterback coming in here. He's going to be great. He's going to fix all of our problems.
Give him his own office.
And we're just going to let him have his own office. We're going to let him run this, let him run that. And that crap doesn't work. And now he's on like a $1.2 million contract for the Pittsburgh Steelers, who have a legitimate, corporate culture, team culture, understanding that Mike Tomlin's the man there. Nobody else is the man. Mike Tomlin's the man there. And the moment that Ben Roethlisberger left, Mike Tomlin ascended again to becoming the man there. And you follow the way that they do things. And, they won a game yesterday where they kicked 6 field goals.
Yeah.
That is old school Ravens Steelers.
Ravens Steelers, which I didn't think it was going to be. And we talked about the over-under and how it was the tied for the highest of the week, and it certainly was an old school Ravens Steelers game. But yeah, I mean, I just they need, if it's not Gruden, because I want it to be Gruden, another guy I think that because of his history, there's two guys out there with lawsuits against the NFL. These are the guys that I'd say the Jets could bring in because of their situation. But Brian Flores would be another guy. Like Brian Flores could come here. He could fix that defense immediately. You'd have to pair him up with the right offensive guy. Couldn't be some tomato can like Todd Downing or Nathaniel Hackett. Got to actually hire a real coach for once. But Brian Flores could get these idiot losers on this defense to actually play real defense. Because Rob Saleh had him playing okay defense. And we got to give Rob Saleh some credit here because that defense has gotten so bad since he has left. It's a different group. So as much as I didn't like Rob Saleh as a head coach, I will apologize for the fact that this guy had a hell of a lot more influence on that defense than I thought he did. I thought he just stood around with his arms crossed and did nothing.
Just the mere presence of Aaron Rodgers is not allowing these coaches to control the team. You know, they just don't. I mean, like, he is untouchable. He's a great player. He's the smartest person in the room, and they all know it. Everybody's deferring to him. And, you know, the other fact of this thing from an offensive perspective, I'm like, you know, where was Garrett Wilson yesterday?
Yeah, I mean, this is another guy. I'm so tired of these guys.
Yeah, but it's not him. I mean, if he doesn't have opportunities, the ball's not being thrown.
I know. But
it's not his fault.
Yeah, but he has opportunities because he's not open, or what's going on? Because when he had a couple of games where he was open, Aaron Rodgers was getting the ball, he had over 100 yards receiving, touchdowns, he's up there and whatever. So what is it? I mean, in the beginning of the season, and he had, you know, the great play and a couple of good games. Beginning of the season, we talked about this too before Devontae Adams got here, how they weren't on the same page. All right, so then what is it? It could be a combination of Garrett Wilson's just not that good of a route runner, and he's just more physically gifted, and that's why he's so good, or Aaron Rodgers is so washed up that he can't find these guys anymore. I don't know what it is, or a combination of both. But, like, the basis, like, all the things that the Jets were based on is all a farce, all lies. It all stinks. Garrett Wilson isn't good. Sauce Gardner isn't good. Woody Johnson, when he came back from England to he's going to spend all the money he stinks. He's an idiot. Aaron Rodgers is washed up. Everything that this thing was built on sucks. Devontae Adams, washed up. Breece Hall, okay. Not great, okay. I mean, they've got nothing. There's nothing there. Nothing. They've got nothing to build on going forward. Zero. Now, if you get a real coach who can maybe get something out of this talent, that's the only thing. But then, what are you going to do with this quarterback who's cooked? You really going to have him play next year?
I've said it. I said it. Was it 2 weeks ago now? It's everything is deferred to Aaron. Everything. There's nobody.
So you got to get rid of him.
It doesn't feel like anybody's in control. No, you could actually. Aaron could be here next year if you get the right coach in here. And I don't want some coach in here looking for autographs or anything else. I want some coach in here laying the hammer down and saying, this is the way we're doing things. And somebody that's going to come in here that's going to make the team competitive. I mean, like, uber competitive, like giving a crap. Now, I will say that they had the lead, and this defense collapsed in the fourth quarter. You know, they fought back, and they took the lead. And then the defense collapsed.
Yeah.
So I will say the first half, they were awful on offense. I mean, just absolutely brutal on offense, looking like they didn't even want to belong there. And then, of course, the second half, and then the coaching decision-making and whether or not they're on the same page. Should we go for two? Should we go for it on 4th and 1? I mean, all these different discussions that ultimately ended up coming back and biting them in the ass. But, who's to think that they're going to make a 4th down play?
No, right.
At that situation, you're assuming that, 99% of the time we're going to make the 4th down play. This is the Jets.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen.
And I'm just...
Kick the field goal, go up 5, and go play defense.
Yes, which is fine. I actually had no issue with that. And to watch them just do what they did.
But then again, a nuanced press conference after the game is, well, I thought we were going to go for that. If we're going to be great, we got to go for that. We're going to make that.
Well, no, I thought that was with going for 2. I thought he said was that going for 2 or going for the 4th down?
I think it was going for the 4th down.
Okay. Well, either way, what he was doing was questioning a decision. It's like, all right, if you're that much in charge, then tell him you're going for it. I mean, all right, my follow-up would be, well, Aaron, you were brought here to lead everybody, be in charge of the offense, like you've handpicked half this roster. You telling me you can't make that call in that situation? Tell Jeff Ulbrich I want to go for this. I mean, okay. So now all of a sudden you're genuflecting to Todd Downing and
well, maybe he doesn't want that decision in real time.
Well,
Maybe he just wants to question the decision after the game.
Well, yeah. Well, then that's a loser mentality.
That's the thing. I mean, like if you want to make the decision, then make the decision.
God, I can't think of you try to compare the Nets and that bust to this. I mean, this is so much worse. And I loved how the Nets blew up and everybody, the Kevin Durant, they couldn't get out of here. All those trades when we were in Arizona were amazing because it was like finally they were giving up. Kyrie's gone and Kevin Durant's gone. But this is, they at least made it. They won a playoff round and made it to a Game 7 in a second-round playoff series. At least that happened with them. I mean, this team is as bad as any team in the game. I mean, if it weren't for the Giants, they'd be the worst team in football.
Well, I don't know. The Jaguars are pretty bad. I would say the Raiders.
Quarterback's hurt.
I would say the Raiders are pretty bad.
The Jets are just as bad.
I know. I would say the Panthers are pretty bad.
The Panthers beat the Giants, so they're better than the Giants.
Yeah, but I'm saying that all these teams are that bad.
Well, the Jets are right there in that conversation.
This doesn't make any sense because there are players here, but they don't look like they're playing. I will say, like I said, the second half offensively much better. But the defense in the fourth quarter was brutal. Well, so we could talk about coaching decisions, which are open for discussion. We could talk about whether or not to go for it on fourth down, whether or not to go for 2 points. We could talk about all of that. But at the end of the day, if your defense melts down again against Anthony Richardson, I don't know what Jalen Mills is doing.
Well, I also think that we're beyond specifics in these losses now. Like, we're beyond that. This is what it is. They're 3-8, and they lost to Anthony Richardson and the Colts at home. So, like, you can't. You've lost all sorts of games for all sorts of reasons. You're just a flat-out stone terrible football team. And the difference between all these teams that we talked about, and I guess the Jacksonville Jaguars had some expectations, at least from their owner in a division.
They spent all that money in the offseason.
Right. But then they got a quarterback who's hurt, whatever. But all those other teams, like the Carolina Panthers and the Raiders and the Giants, and nobody expected them to be anything. This team was supposed to go to the playoffs. We had everybody betting the Jets over 9.5, whatever it was, wins. Oh, the Jets, the playoffs, this and that. I mean, they had real legitimate expectations this year. So it's like, so then when you're putting that team in the same breath as these other loser football teams, I mean, it is just.
It's going to be interesting now as we, turn our attention to the draft, and we've been talking about this. Shedeur Sanders is going to be the number one quarterback taken. Now, whether or not he'll be one overall will depend on whether or not somebody does what the Carolina Panthers did and go up and try to trade for that number one pick, especially, let's say, New England has the number one pick. They're going to want Travis Hunter. There's no question about it. He is the best player in college football. It's not even close. But I would think that they obviously would then trade out of that first overall to somebody who would want Shedeur. And it sounds like now, and Deanna said this, I'm going to be a dad, meaning I'm going to help my son get to where I want him to go and to go play for who he wants to play for or who I want him to play for, or maybe he's going to end up playing for me.
True.
Somewhere.
Yeah, and I'm sure that they'll figure it out somehow, and it's going to be.
This thing is going to be.
It's going to be high drama.
This is going to be. I can wait because I don't want time to go too fast, but I cannot wait until we get to the really close to the draft to see what the hell goes on, and to see if the Sanders pull a Manning.
I'm sure that they will, and we'll be stuck here with Aaron Rodgers and Daniel Jones for another year.
No, I don't think that's going to be the case for the Giants.
Well, who are they going to have? Who's their quarterback going to be?
I don't know. It could be anybody. It will be. I'm trying to think who was screaming on the radio station. Was it Moose? Was it Sal? I caught a little bit of everybody's shows. It was actually pretty funny this week. Somebody kept using the word stopgap. Stopgap. Like the Giants are going to have a stopgap.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair.
That's kind of like what Aaron Rodgers is right now.
Right.
I was a stopgap.
Yeah, but Aaron Rodgers was supposed to be like the legend who added to the Lombardi case, and now he's just a stopgap loser. All right, Boomer and Gio on the Fan and CBS Sports Network.
Jesus.
As in a Jet uniform, he is Hall of Famer, but here he's a loser.